we'll go ahead and get started. So one of the things that we're very excited about seeing is AP automation with purchasing. AP automation rolled out a couple of releases ago for general availability, and that has allowed our clients to have vendors email their invoices directly in, or they upload their invoices directly into Intacct, and they are then processed through Intacct and coded with vendor information, all the information that's on that invoice, so that you are then just reviewing that before you post that invoice and create that AP bill. So we're very excited that this is now rolling out with purchasing. So it is generally available after this release, so it's available to all users who are using the purchasing. It will save the incoming vendor invoice as a draft, so that you have the opportunity to review that and post that and make sure if there's any updates that you need to make to that before it gets posted, you can do that. And it'll match it to any previous documents in your workflow. So if you have a receiver or a purchase order, it's going to match that invoice to that prior document. You will actually define how your incoming purchasing documents map to the existing source transactions. So you'll do a one-time setup in the system that will tell the system how to match those documents when those come in. So instead of converting the purchase transaction, the receiver, or the purchase order to that next step, that purchasing invoice or vendor invoice, Intacct now will match that invoice that it gets in through email or through uploading that invoice, and it will match that to that transaction, so you don't have to do that convert step. Incoming transactions are created as vendor invoices, but you can change them if you needed to. So if for whatever reason it came in, it wasn't actually an invoice, maybe it was a pack slip or something like that, and you need to change that transaction type, you can. For transactions that don't belong in purchasing, such as utility bills, you can change that. You can select to change that to an AP bill to move it directly to AP. So if the vendor emails in a utility bill that doesn't go through the purchasing workflow, so there's no prior document to match that to, you can mark on that bill to change that to an AP bill, and then it will move it directly to AP versus it having any kind of failure or anything that where it doesn't match those transactions. Okay. So this is kind of a workflow for that. You're going to have the option to email or upload those documents. Through the AI-powered digitization, it's going to look for the vendor, the GL coding, dimension matching, and it's going to match it to that purchase order or that purchasing transaction. It will report any exceptions and identify any duplicates, and then it will create a draft vendor invoice, give you the opportunity to review that, make any corrections, and then any feedback goes back through the AI-powered digitization for it to learn that, so that the next time it gets that invoice in, it has learned over time what how you are making corrections to those if applicable. Okay. We also will have standalone vendor invoices with purchasing. So I know some of our clients are using purchasing for their AP processing just because of the additional flexibility that we had with some workflow in that. So you're not using that in a traditional manner where you have purchase orders and receivers. It's just straight vendor invoices, but it's using those in the purchasing module. So that is going to be available to early adopters. So that is something that if you're interested in, you can reach out to us. You can also find in the help information on the release notes on your homepage in Intacct, you can find where you can register for that early adopter if you're interested in participating in that. That will allow you this same functionality with the AP automation, but using that in the purchasing module. So we're very excited to see that. We know a lot of clients have been waiting for that to come out. So it's going to have the benefit of matching the documents if you're using traditional purchasing with purchase orders, receivers, and having those documents need to match to the prior steps in your workflow. But it also has standalone transactions. So you can set up one or the other or use both options. Okay. Moving then to employee expenses. Again, we're seeing a lot of things coming out with each release with the AI and the automation. Intacct is really working hard to make our lives easier. So they've added in automated employee expenses where employees can email their expense receipts directly to Sage Intacct. So when they do that, a new list is created called their electronic receipts, and it includes links to the original receipts emailed in by the employee. And then when you create your expense reports or they create their own expense reports, as the case may be, then you're able to attach that electronic receipt to your expense report. So you're emailing those in as you're getting those receipts in, and then when you go create that expense report, you are associating those receipts in with your expense reports at that time and attaching those to your expense reports. This is also going to be available for multi-currency companies. So if you have any multi-currency receipts, expenses, you'll also be able to use multi-currency expenses for your employees as well. Okay. Email communications, you've probably all noticed as you've been logging into Intacct over the last few weeks, a little pop-up box that says you may need to validate your custom domain. So if you've seen that, this is what this is referring to. If you have your system set up in Intacct where it is set to and configured to use your domain email addresses to send emails from Intacct, then there's going to be a new requirement starting May 2025 where all customers who send emails using that custom domain must authenticate and validate their domain. So it's just adding some additional security in here. But we do recommend clients that, particularly if you're having issues with emails getting caught in spam or customers saying they're not getting emails from you, if you're sending out invoices, or your internal team, if you're not getting emails, if you are doing payment notification emails, or whatever the case is, that you set this up. This is under your company configuration, and this allows you to set up your domain so that those emails look like they're coming from your system and your email versus coming from an Intacct email that's potentially not known to your clients and those that you're sending, your vendors and anyone you're sending emails to from the system. Again, this starts effective May 2025, but you can go in already and set this up and do this. If you're setting this up new and you haven't set your domain up yet, and you need assistance with that, you can certainly reach out to our team and we'll be happy to help you with that. This authentication just improves email deliverability. It protects your domain from being used in phishing attacks and just aligns with better security and compliance. You will need to work with your email administrator to obtain some DNS keys and other information. So it's not something that we can do for you, but we can certainly assist you with that if you would like to set that up, because we will need to work with your email administrator. So throughout the modules, there are a few things that are changes in permissions that you may want to look at for your team. In projects and time and expenses, there are some changes for clients that are using the embedded version of Sage Intelligent Time, and there are some changes to permissions under My Timesheets and Staff Timesheets. under the general ledger, there is some new reports available and some new functionality with some variance analysis and GL regularization, account reclassification. That's a mouthful. And then under order entry, revenue transaction entries and bulk action runs. Sorry for the typo there. So a few permission changes that you may want to look at and make sure that your users have all of the permissions that they need. Okay. Moving on then to accounts payable. We are very excited about this. Vendor-based approval for bill routing is now available in your AP bill approval policy. So what this allows you to do is when you're setting up your workflow and your approval policy in the AP module, you have a field or an option for vendor-based approval now. When you choose that, then when you see or go to your vendor record, you will see that you will have a bill approver field on the vendor record itself. You can update those vendors manually or with the CSV import. So if you want to turn this on, you can update all of your vendors with that bill approver very easily with an import. So not something that's going to be overwhelming for you to have to maintain if you do decide you want to turn that on. Any unrestricted business user, employee user with approved bills permission can be set up as the approver. You can also set up user groups as the approver as long as all of the members of the group are unrestricted and have the appropriate permissions. If a vendor does not have an assigned approver, the bill is automatically approved for that step in your approval policy. So just looking at a couple of screenshots here on the left, this is the setup here for the workflow. So you can see in my accounts payable bill approval policy, I have it set first to value approval, and then I have it set to my value approval for my transaction location, which you can't see because that's cut off, and then my vendor-based approval. So once I set that up, then on the vendor itself over on the right, you'll see I have a bill approver. And so I can set an unrestricted user, which means they can't be restricted to specific entities. An unrestricted business user or an employee user can be set up as the approver, and we can also set up user groups for those approvers as well. Okay. This one is just a notice. The AR received payments. You probably, if you've been on the system for a while now, have seen that there's two AR received payments options. In early 2020, we got the receive payments new option available, and as Intacct normally does when they make a significant change to a process, they always kind of keep that old way of doing it out there and let us slowly migrate to that and adjust to that without kind of just making a big switch overnight. But they are going to be retiring that receive a payment option in May 2025, which would be the R2 release. So if you are still using that receive a payment and not receive payments new, I would recommend that you start using that new function just to get you comfortable with that before that receive a payment option is gone with the next release. Right. In GL, we can now go in and prevent direct posting to journal entries. I know we've worked with some of our clients where we have set up smart rules and smart events, things like that, to prevent users from posting journal entries to perhaps the AP journal code that is designed really for system-generated entries. And so in order to prevent users from manually bypassing that, we've set up other things in place where it's it gives you errors or alerts you if that happens. Intacct's kind of listened to our feedback on that, and they've now actually given us the option to disallow direct posting to that journal entry. So on your different journal codes, if you only want those to be used for system-generated entries like the AP journals, the AR journals, etc., then you can set that to disallow direct posting. This will prevent users from being able to enter a journal entry manually to that journal code, and they must then be posted through the subledger. This also prevents journals from being created using this code through the API. So it will prevent API-related imports or integrations as well. So they must come from the subledger modules when this is set up. Okay, so this checkbox will be available in your system again with the new release starting that rolls out tomorrow night. So you can go in on any of these that you don't want to allow users to be able to post journals to and check that box, and then no users can enter journals to those different journal codes. Inventory control. This is a little bit of a new feature here with supplies item management. So what this allows you to do is kind of take some of the inventory functionality with purchasing, but use that for your supplies that are required to operate your business. So whether that's your paper, your pens, your coffee, all of those things that are needed to run your operations, those are set up as supply items. Those cannot be used in sales orders when they're identified as supply items. And then employees can enter requests in when they need supplies. So they can say, I need coffee, or I need pens or paper, or whatever the case is, and whatever you set up as those supplies. And then you can designate a supplies manager that can create either purchase orders from those requests, or if you have in-stock items in your warehouses, if you are using inventory and you have warehouses set up, then you can transfer items to those different locations from your warehouses. You can set up transaction definitions with workflow approval on those supply requests. So if you want to make sure that when that employee requests coffee or pens, that it's going through an approval process, you can set up that approval. If you're currently using inventory control, you can enable supplies inventory within your inventory control application. So you go into that application configuration and turn that on. If you don't currently have inventory control and you just want to use the supplies items management, you can subscribe to the supplies inventory, which includes limited inventory control functionality. So it's not going to keep up with counts of your items. It's not going to do that full inventory functionality, but it's going to allow you to be able to have users request things that are supplies, and then you can create purchase orders for those if you need to. So a couple of screenshots here for this one. On the left is an item setup. So you can see I've got a non-inventory item and I've got it marked now. There's a checkbox to say that this item is a supplies inventory item. And then I will see a couple of other task menus under my purchasing menu. I have a supplies inventory section with requisitions, approvals, and a supplies workbench. And then also under my inventory control module, I see the same supplies inventory module with issues, returns, and a supply workbench as well. And then this bottom screenshot here is the actual supplies workbench, where I can see any of those requests that have come in from users or from employees to be able to then determine if I want to approve those and take action on those and create a purchase order. All right. Moving on, also in inventory is ensuring your inventory valuation is maintained accurately. When inventory costs are updated on an ongoing basis, your financials are obviously going to be more correct. So there is now a maintain inventory valuation costing update job that you can schedule to run nightly. That will look for any cost differences and ensure all related transactions which impact your inventory are processed correctly. If you are a current inventory module user, you'll be asked if you want to enable this if you go in and modify your configuration for inventory, but it is still an optional setting for you. If you are new to inventory and this is something that you are adding to your module or to your software, it will be pre-configured and this will be turned on and you cannot disable this. So this is just a job that will run every night to update your inventory valuation based on any transactions that have posted. Right. Moving down to purchasing. We've been able to set up purchasing delegates, purchasing approval delegates for a while now, but you can set up a purchasing delegate now can be set up for a restricted user. That was previously not something that you could do. And we can set it up for a specific time period. So I can go in and turn on my delegate. I can't change my delegate. The system admin is the only one that can assign the delegate so that we don't have any issues with potential collusion. But I can assign, I can turn on my delegate that is assigned, and then I can say a start and end date. So if I know I'm going to be out of the office and I need someone else to approve my transactions for me for next week, then I can go in and set that start and end date. So then it will turn that delegation on that start date, so I don't have to remember to go check that box, you know, as I'm trying to get out of the office on Friday to, you know, get home and get packed for my trip or whatever. So being able to set that start and end date allows you to kind of do that ahead of time and make sure that that is set up. You can also now set up user groups as assigned approvers. And then if a user in an approval group doesn't have the appropriate permissions, the approval request is automatically redirected to the next approver in the group. So if I set up a user group as my delegate, then whomever the first person that has the appropriate permissions in that group would be the approver for that. Okay. Right. There's a new report available. So all of our companies, all of our clients, when we set you up, you're created with what we call a quick start template. That's why you have a lot of those kind of canned reports, if you will, that come with the system. So those are part of this quick start template. With that, you can now install a couple of new variance reports that are available to you to analyze your budget performance either by department or by location. There's 3 versions of the report: a variance analysis by department, or a variance analysis by location report. To get those reports, you're going to go to your report center, and where you would see that you would create a new report. Instead of creating a new report, you'll go to the Quick Start library, and then you'll see a list of reports there. You can install any of those reports available in that library if you see anything that interests you, but the 3 specifically that we're talking about today are the variance reports, variance analysis reports. So you can see those different options, and then you just click on the install button on the left, and it will install those to your environment. So this is just a quick look, screenshot of the variance analysis by location. So it's got year-to-date actual, year-to-date budget, and then that variance with some conditional highlighting and formatting in here as well. Okay, so some predefined variance reports for us that can may be helpful for you as you're reviewing your budget numbers. Okay. A few changes that have been are going to be made to the user experience. List views, again, those enhancements are continuing to be made with each new release. So we are seeing those being added to more and more list views in the system, where you can select that new user experience, and you can add, move, and resize columns, freeze columns, sort columns. You can do some advanced filtering. You can view the details next to the summary look of the list view. So see on the left the summary view and the details on the right, and you can do some bulk operations. So they're continuing to roll those changes to those list views out to more and more list views in the system. And I believe this is our last thing, our entity configuration. For those of you who potentially have limited entities, business entities set up, they now have a checkbox on the entity setup page where you can mark that this is for a limited entity when you set that up. So limited entities do now need to be marked as such when they're set up. They are restricted, limited entities are restricted to one of the following. So if you're doing fund accounting, 50 or less transactions a month. If it's an operating entity for a for-profit industry, then 10 transactions a month or less, or it's for qualified nonprofit fund balancing or non-transactional archive entity. So if it's an entity that's no longer being used, but you need it for archive purposes, then that would be qualify as a limited entity as well. And this, again, if you're using those limited entities, we'll be reaching out to you to work with you to make sure that we get those all marked appropriately in your environment for going forward, because Intacct is using this for reporting purposes to make sure that licensing for limited entities is going to align with what is set up in your system.